everyone. So here today we're talking about composition of functions. And I want you to consider this scenario here. Consider a job where you get paid by the hour in euros. You go to work each day, work for so many hours, and then you get paid based upon the hours you worked. Sounds like a pretty standard kind of scenario for an hourly wage job. So now consider the number of hours you work. H, hours is H, is a function of the days you go to work. So you go one day, you work so many hours. You go 2 days, you work so many hours. So the number of days controls the number of hours. And I've made up this function that the hours is a function of days. If the days are 1, then I work 5 hours. So I'm working 5-hour days. And the number of hours you work, H, is a function of your take-home pay in euros. So my hours, if I work 10 hours, then I get so many euros. Hours controls how many euros. Days control hours, hours control euros. And here's my function for euros. I've said 11 euros per each hour minus 6. So this is probably like union dues or taxes or some scenario like that. You never make exactly what you're supposed to. You always make a little bit less. And this is a simplification of how people are actually paid, but it's good enough for this scenario. So this is the scenario. I have two functions and 3 different variables. Let's consider the graphs here. When I look at my graphs, I can see this. I can see this. This is my days and hours. And as you see, if I work 1 day, 5 hours, 2 days, 10 hours, and so on. And this is my hours. If I work 3 hours, I make about $27 roughly. And I'm going to have to estimate my euro take-home pay because my scale is not very good. And here are the equations. So let's consider this. If I go and I work for 1 day, so D equals 1. If I work for 1 day, I know that my pay is 5. Now, if H equals 5, this is 5, then I know that my take-home pay is probably about $48. This is estimating from here. So I can see that it is going to be about 48 euros from the graph. Similarly, if I did the same scenario, but let's change colors. Let's go to green. If I would work, let's say, for 2.5 hours, meaning I get sick halfway through the first day, or through the second day, that means I'm only going to work about 12.5 hours. Going over to here then, if I go 12.5 hours, oh, I'm off my scale. Let's change this. Let's work for a day and a half, which is going to be roughly here, which is about 7.5 hours. So if I go to 7.5 up from here, and then I can go across, and I can see that I'm roughly going to make about $75. So the days control the hours control the total take-home pay in euros. But if I was to do this algebraically, I know for this first one, if I want to find hours, given that D is 1, so that's 5 times 1, which gives me 5. Now remember, this is an estimate based upon my unclear graph. So now H is 5. If I want to find how many euros I make, I plug in 5. And that means I'm going to have 11 times 5 minus 6, which is 55 minus 6, which is 49 euros. That's pretty close. If I look at, I could see how that's 49. And so the days control the hours, and the hours control the euros. Well, wouldn't it be nice if I could go straight from putting days in to getting euros out? to do that, this is the whole key of what a composition of functions is. I'm going to say that euros is a function of hours, which is a function of days. So what this says, if I want to do it when d is 1, E at h when d is 1 means E at, well, if h is 1, I figured it out to be 5. And if E at 5, I figured that out to be 49. And so the notation I use for this is E of a little circle h of d. These two things here, this is exactly the same as this. But we did by the numbers. We can also go and do it by the equations. If I take E of h, h of d, well, I know I want E of h of d, which is 5d. This is my h. Take this value and plug it in to my E function, and it's going to be 11, not h, 11 times 5d, which is my h value, minus 6, which is 55d minus 6. And this is E of h of d. Now, I've bypassed hours altogether, and that's the power of a composition function. If I'm trying to relate three variables, I make a function that takes the first one and goes all the way to the last one without the middle step. So, if I consider this, I could have started off, I do d. And then from d, I get h of d. And then from h of d, I get E of h of, let me try that again. I get E of h of d. Or I could go straight all the way here and say E of h of d. And that's the power of the composition. I can go straight to the end and I combine these two functions.